And so there's that perverse set of incentives that ends up with like you're eating plastic and styrofoam and like, and like everyone's feeding that to their kids and nobody's like getting it. That's fiat. It's this like perverse set of incentives. There's a great Tool song. They say lie, cheat, and steal. And like, that's it right there. It's like you are rewarded if you lie, cheat, and steal better than everyone else.
Hey everybody, this is the High Hash Rate Podcast. I'm Mike.
And I'm Dan.
And this podcast is just two plebs getting high and talking about Bitcoin, life, and the absurdity of the fiat world. Our guests don't necessarily get high with us, and you don't have to either.
But it helps. Hey everybody, welcome to the latest High Hash Rate. I'm stoned as hell, and Mike is late as usual, so he'll just pop in the next 10, 15 minutes to the show. But today, we have TC, and you guys might know him from Twitter or he's meditation_man on Twitter. And then he is also the creator of the TimeChain Calendar. And if you haven't seen the TimeChain Calendar, just go to TimeChainCalendar.com and check it out. But hey, TC, what's going on, man?
Yo, what's up? Thanks for having me. This is a chill evening so far.
Oh yeah, so you used to get on Spaces a lot, right? Or do you still do?
Yeah, I spent some time on Spaces with a lot of people over 21, 22 into this year. It's been a really wild ride.
That's what I thought. Yeah, I definitely have seen you on there before. So because of that, like you probably have, I mean, based on our listeners and kind of knowing our fan base, people who have at least heard of you or TimeChainCalendar.com, which we'll get into here in a bit. But what did you, when you were on Spaces when you're on Spaces, what kind of topics are you usually focusing on? And like how, what is your public persona, I guess, for what you like to talk about in places like that?
Well, I think Spaces has been a very interesting place for just kind of open forum, everything from Bitcoin to the clown world out there, and
right,
all these wild twists and turns over the last several years. I think it's just been a place where you can spout your opinions, you can learn new things, you can have that discourse that covers a lot of ground. I've made some friends. I've made some real friends, and
it's been a huge community.
And it's kind of like a interesting experience, just connecting with people all over the globe at the same time. Like what's going on in your own local environment has gotten weirder and weirder. At least that was my experience the last several years. Like,
oh, totally. So like that's the interesting thing about it is that it's been a huge community build. There's a lot of them like professional relationships. I mean, you got sovereign leaders of countries going into Spaces, Elon Musk, like some of the biggest celebrities, some of the biggest billionaires, bankers, like huge names going into these Spaces. It's not just, it's mainstream, right? And then you've got these little tiny niche Spaces where it's like maybe a dozen people and they're talking about really specific things or like really political things that isn't really wide stream, and then they'll pop in and out and go to these bigger, broader Spaces talking about the macroeconomic situation, etc. Anyways, my whole point of that is it's not just, like you said, not just Americans or people in your community. It's people from all over the world, and they're speaking in memes, and they're talking about Bitcoin, and they're talking about the bullshit going on with all the politics in every country, regardless of what side they're on, the economic crisis, banking crisis, right? And like these things are happening globally, and they're all connecting and talking about it. And you're kind of realizing, oh, this is the same problems everywhere else, the same clown world everywhere else for the most part. And it's been like really unifying. And
yeah, that was my experience. Like,
is that what drew you in?
I mean, at home where I live, I feel like we had a big change in society. It just got a lot weirder. Everybody felt it, and as a result, you can easily become more isolated within your community, within your family, a lot of divisiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the same time all that was going on, I think that platform, that space is provided for people to directly communicate. And I found it to be like really, really helpful in that time, because
Right.
things have gotten pretty strange. And just even to know that uh, people in other parts of the world are experiencing the same thing, I think that's deep. That's very helpful for people to feel something to relate to other people over. And then Bitcoin as that kind of glue
Mm-hmm.
to really focus people's like intellect in the same kind of place. That was a really important part of that whole process too.
And that's what kind of transcend. I mean, you've got a lot of things that you've got spaces for people who it's kind of more focused to their local politics or their country's politics or something that's more geographically specific. Whereas the one of at least one of the main exceptions to that, which was global, and people were talking about it from everywhere. It didn't matter which part of the globe they were on. They were talking about Bitcoin. They were connecting, and they were like relating to each other based on these like almost as silly to say as memes that kind of conveyed your disposition towards the current thing or the anti-current thing, whatever it was. And it was like you were kind of figuring out who each other was from all, and there was other topics, other areas of interest didn't have that kind of global reach and connection the way Bitcoin did. Would you agree with that?
Definitely. Definitely. I think there's a whole new language that people are able to communicate with.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's like
Without even
so
saying
much
the
to do
words
with,
explicitly. You might not even know the word for hard work in another language, right? But like if you when you say proof of work, I mean that's a literal technology, right? Like it's a little hashing mechanism or whatever, a consensus mechanism for Bitcoin, but it's really it communicates a much broader message, which is just to say like you value truth, you value honest work, integrity, that kind of thing, right? And all you have to say is like I'm proof of work, and everybody kind of gets that regardless of what culture they come from.
oh, that's fundamental. That's a that's a deep value proposition. And
Right.
I think everybody knows we need more of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like society, the fiat nature of society is really speaking to its lack of virtues and lack of integrity, right? A lot of corruption, a lot of shortcuts, a lot of people being cheated and lied to. And like proof of work and truth and verification and the things that Bitcoin like teaches you, and that's all heavy duty stuff you can apply in every aspect of your life. So very, very relatable.
Um, did you mostly do like were you talking and just listening in bigger rooms, or did you also have like go into some of the smaller ones and more niche ones?
Well, I really got pulled in through Bitcoin in mostly Bitcoin spaces,
Okay.
but Bitcoin transcends all these other areas because undeniably Bitcoin causes you to start understanding money and finance and
Right.
geopolitics
You
and
follow the
one
money.
rabbit hole to the next. And every single area, um, there's a lot to unravel and a lot to learn. And that's all I felt is just a pretty rapid pace communication happening there. A lot of people learned the fundamentals of Bitcoin and how to use Bitcoin and how to do all these other things. I mean, I picked up my understanding of mining and my desire to try to get into mining more through those spaces.
That's yeah,
And
me too.
yeah, man, I ended up aping into it, even like in not the best way possible. But
That's how you learn sometimes.
that's how you learn. Exactly. And so this whole way of everybody interacting on spaces was really a just nonstop experience of
And
people sharing things and
right.
learning and fighting with each other. And
Oh yeah, and it was
It's
it was
good.
it was fun to fight, right? Because people disagreed with things, and you were either in polite society, you're just not supposed to talk about that stuff. And that's been kind of tradition for years. And then with COVID, you're just kind of locked in, depending on where you live, right? There's more restrictions, and you just had that interaction with people. Like you're constantly surrounded by your family. You can't be like constantly arguing and yelling with them. That's, you at least try to compromise and you're incentivized to chill, with them. But like you get on there and you can just hash it out with people, so to speak, and really just go. And it seemed toxic, but I think it was an outlet.
Man, people were trying to sort out like some of the heaviest
Yeah. Yeah. They're trying to
like
solve the world's
unraveling of
problems.
like your whole mental framework, how you view the world, how you've traveled through the world as
Right.
an adult your whole life. Let's just pull that thread and keep pulling it and completely unwind everything you know. That's a
Yeah.
heavy process, but it's like,
But
so
everything,
what did we have? We had like a brawl to like sort it out
but at the same
intellectually.
time, right? Like we were fighting so hard about this kind of stuff. And you kind of mentioned some of the clown world stuff and like some of the just the way the world's changed. And it's to me similar to like kind of what's going on in the monetary policy right now. Like everything's breaking because they raised rates too fast. It was just this rapid change of pace. And in this culture, we've had that too, just this rapid change of culture and pace. And it's the idea that everybody's starting to realize that it's unraveling in the money system and in it's definitely related to our culture and the society, right? And the idea that they're going to somehow step in and do the fiscally responsible thing and make us take some hard medicine and strap up or pull ourselves up our bootstraps and just have some discipline all across the spectrum of our lives, especially in the banking system and the monetary system. The idea that the Western contemporary regimes or consensus, Europe, United States, wherever, that acquiesced so quickly to just the changes in culture to the point where it's like, a dude with a beard is winning the women's gold medal in weightlifting, right? Like, and it's just that's considered normal now. Like the idea that the people who acquiesce to such objectively visible truths and conventional wisdom that they're going to somehow stand up and put an end to this fiat craziness in the banking and financial system. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't know if you kind of agree with that, but it's like this rapid
Well,
change
you're
is
you're
coming to a
touching
head.
Yeah, man, you're talking about that proof of work again.
Yeah, right.
And so you're talking about some responsibility in the money system, and yet here we're living in the times where we're seeing the most just absolute lack of responsibility and total corruption and totally perverse incentives
Yes.
and a totally broken system of measuring value. Like, how are human beings supposed to build a complex functioning society if all the incentives are perverted, if the
Right.
unit of measuring value is fundamentally flawed? I
Right.
mean,
Exactly.
it's shocking, and at the same time, once you see some of these truths, it's actually really understandable why the world is so clownish, because this permeates every level of human existence, from like how our family dynamics work today versus generations ago. Everybody sees it, that like we've really left the fundamentals. Think about any activity you do. If you abandon the fundamentals, it's going to fall apart in one way or another. And like we're broken as a society on so many levels, like just families not sticking together, and then that leads to communities that don't care about each other, and all of this is reinforced by all of this bad spoiled incentives that like the money system encourages in all levels: individuals, businesses, corporations, politics. The whole global system is just like a bunch of people stepping on each other's heads, lying and cheating and stealing.
What do you think? Do you think that we're hitting like a speed bump or all right, not speed bump's not the right word, but we're hitting like just a tremor or do you think that things are literally unraveling right now? So, like, to put it in context, if depending on when you hear this recording, they just bailed out Credit Suisse last weekend. Bunch of other banks are failing. Credit default swaps on banks and other financial institutes are spiking. They're guaranteeing every deposit, talking about CBDCs and all that stuff. So we're in the middle of that banking crash. Do you think this is going to keep going, or do you think we're going to even out and maybe the big crash is further ahead?
I mean, you look at fiat money and everything is pointing towards it can't sustain. We know that. Like, if you understand what a Ponzi the whole thing is, you know that has to end at some point. That doesn't just continue kicking the can down the road forever.
And
You come to a point where
and it feels like people are like kind of accepting that and almost cheering for it in a lot of ways. Like, it's finally over. It's coming undone. And it's almost like that sentiment of like, yeah, spark the bank run. Let's do it. Let's get this over with.
well, for people people that see it clearly, they're
Sure.
anxious.
Yeah.
The rest of society is like in this paralyzed state where they're like stopping themselves from seeing it. So they're
Sure.
getting adapted to
In
weirder
denial.
and weirder
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
as considered normal. And that's a weird, like, boiling frog kind of scenario, right?
Right.
Like, they the way that media communicates things and the way that our society spreads around ideas and sort of group think, that is just kind of like snowballing right now. So
Right.
yeah, we're in this moment and people don't know how to behave, and the people who hold the most responsibility are misbehaving the worst. And these financial institutions are beyond leveraged to their eyeballs.
Right.
And at some point, these defaults gotta stack up, and something's gotta give, something's gotta deflate. So we're gonna see. I mean, unfortunately, if I had to predict, I think they're gonna make really extreme changes,
Mm-hmm.
and they know that they need things to break in order to allow really big changes in. And I think people will welcome in really big changes if things are broken enough.
Right.
And that's what history tells us happens.
Interesting. I think, yeah.
T- TC, am I referring
Yo,
to you? Hi. Hello. I just popped in. Hold on.
what
I
is
was
up?
listening. I continuing on this conversation, but something came up in my mind, a question as you were talking about fiat.
Nah, go. I mean, I was just really like, let, let's hear it.
I was thinking about what is the concept of fiat for you. I think about fiat in like a spectrum of ways. The biggest one being like someone saying that something has value and it does not, as opposed to it being discovered to have value. What do you think of fiat?
Well, I mean, ultimately, it's about that decree, right? That's what fiat means. And so
This is
fiat,
how I feel. So this is what truth,
yeah, I mean,
my truth.
there's the authority, and they're decreeing this is what gets used as the money, right? And if you just spread that out to all kinds of different life situations, it makes sense. Like, you're like, wait a minute, these food products are all made out of chemicals now instead of food. Like, how does that happen? And then you're like, oh yeah, well, of course they're incentivized to like get creative with a whole bunch of chemicals and chemical companies that they got lying around. And of course they're incentivized to lobby the politics and the politicians to pass all the laws so their industry gets to like either totally monopoly take over all their competitors, or they get to thrive in some other way. And so there's that perverse set of incentives that ends up with like you're eating plastic and styrofoam and like and like everyone's feeding that to their kids and nobody's like getting it. It's like such a small percentage of people that are like, don't feed that to your kids. Like, it's that's fiat. It's this like really perverse set of incentives. People, there's a great Tool song. They say lie, cheat, and steal, and like that's it right there. It's like you are rewarded if you lie, cheat, and steal better than everyone else. And
Right.
think about it. Those suckers over there are playing by the rules. Ha! I know how
Because they
to
made the
twist the
rules.
rules or bend the rules, and so I'm gonna just run laps around them. That's fiat.
Right. And so like what you were saying earlier about, everybody's corrupt, especially at the top, and that permeates down, right? Like when you see that the people at the top, it's just they're nakedly corrupt, right? Like whether or not you can have an opinion that like, Trump sucked or was a shitty president, but like what he did say he did was going to do, even if he didn't do it the way he said he was going to do it, was he like drain the swamp by like kind of being the spoke in the wheel. Like once you realize how corrupt he was, you could not see it in everybody else, even the people that hated him, right? And so it becomes so obvious that everybody at the top's corrupt if you didn't know it already before that. The bankers, everybody, and what is considered just and right is what they say, the laws they make, it's what the money they spend on it. Like that's by decree. Like this is just what right or wrong is, and we see that, and everybody down to the school children are just like, oh, like you just make up the rules, and if you say that that's what it is, and you lobby it enough, or you put enough energy behind just enforcing it, like everybody will just accept it. So everything's just, you have to accept everybody's bullshit. It's just everywhere. It's throughout society. Everybody's just like, oh, I can lie, cheat, and steal. They do it. You just have to. That's the way you win. And now it's
Do,
just
do, do, do you
it's
think
everything.
do you think that something like Spaces or Clubhouse is like a social sort of organism response to this level of corruption of the
Like a
leaders?
real community and sharing real,
Like
trying to figure
the
out what's
fact that we
right.
can, you mentioned earlier that caught my ear was direct communication. You said this term allows for direct communication. I'm thinking, okay,
Right.
what else is peer-to-peer direct communication? Bitcoin is peer-to-peer direct communication. So I was just thinking about like the
Yeah,
power of that, right?
man,
Yeah.
we're kind of going through it again now with Nostr,
Yeah.
and it's
I'm
like
glad you brought that up.
there's yeah, it's huge. I mean, to your question, it's a combination. I mean, the technology comes along and aligns so that these features are capable. And yes, the moment it becomes a problem that people strive to solve by creating those platforms. I mean, shit, Twitter copied Spaces from Clubhouse, and like,
Yeah,
it's
they just ripped it off.
it's right, but it's a different pool of people,
Right. But
and the
broader.
Spaces got kind of used different than the Clubhouse rooms, and like, I don't know. I
Club.
think
Yeah.
it's absolutely this thing where I feel like there's so much limitations and friction and pressure. Like any system, you put too much pressure on it, and shit's gonna squeeze out the sides. And like that's just what's happening. And Bitcoin's one of these things that's just a direct response to that foul effect in society, and the alignment of the technologies coming along where they understood the problem and they sought this solution, and they had the tools to make the solution happen. There's Bitcoin. And like you've got, I think you're right on that. It's that direct connectivity. I mean, this is the exciting thing about the internet, right? Fundamentally, it's just a bunch of computers all over the world talking to each other, right? And now you got computers in your pocket, and it's like we have this interconnected world, but it's like we were saying at the beginning, like there was isolation these last few years. The changes that are happening in the world people are getting cut off from like normal human interconnectivity. So these technologies become more important because they can interconnect people, and it's more important for people across vast distances on Earth to connect directly because of what's happening right now. Like
Right.
people have to communicate, and these things have to happen.
And it's interesting that the more you communicate, when the more you like start meeting these people and talking to these people like very conversationally all over the world, the more you realize, and the more you realize you have in common with them, the more you realize like you can like do business with them, or then you like, whether it's not just like a customer or business to customer type thing, but just all kinds of value transactions between the two of you. And it's like ironic that like at a macro level, world trade is kind of balkanizing, and like globalization is kind of dying, but at a micro level, like individuals using a different system, we're figuring out all these efficient um, censorship resistant ways to interact and do value transactions and do business, perform services for each other, whether it's just storing some, maybe some storing pure data peer to peer, like just kind of incentivizing people to host your data on relays, all kinds of small monetary transactions, like just anything. All this, all this new, the growth of the internet and technology, like all these, like the third world, Africa, South America, parts of Asia are like waking up and connecting, and they're like communicating and interacting with us now every day online. They kind of skipped all the Yahoo chat rooms, and they're just going straight into spaces. And it's like millions of people, and they're like growing economies, and they don't have a system to connect to trade with other people around the world, except they do, and it's growing. And Nostr's marketplace is popping up, and you've got Lightning remittances that are popping up in every country. It's like we're just building this new system right underneath their nose, and theirs just being crippled.
Man, it's so important. That Nostr marketplace thing got me so fucking bullish. That is so wild to think about. Like anyone in the world.
What is Nostr Marketplace?
Okay, so Nostr, you got your keys, right? Anyone can make keys. Like you make the NSEC and the MPub, you spin up a pair of keys. Anyone can do that. So there's no cost to entry, right? But your MPub can be like a profile on social media. It could also be a store, right? And so they're building some applications now, and you have to imagine it's just going to be more of these applications, and they're just going to get better and better.
And dude, I just
Where
got to say
your
how funny it
Nostr
is.
messages.
I just got to say how funny it is. Like Microsoft and Google and like these guys spent so much money on so many engineers and developers and research development to try to figure out like that single identity. I can't remember what Microsoft called it, but it was this kind of like your digital identity that you could sign into like all these different apps and all these different centralized. Yeah. And it's like, or you could just do what Nostr's doing and build a new, or like you
that's
can sign
gonna
into anything.
still be their shit's a little different.
Yeah.
But Nostr's like incredible, simple, performant protocol. And imagine you just use messages, notes to build out products and like conduct a whole storefront on there that's where you can sell your products using Lightning, and
Directly
you
from
could
your
be
node.
anywhere on the planet, and there's no identity KYC, and it's distributed network and anti-fragile, and
it's a global network. You just have to know a little
it's
JavaScript and you can
crazy
plug right
exciting.
into it and sell stuff, sell your services.
I just like see in my head people like anywhere in the world just being able to like conduct commerce seamlessly with no friction.
It ties into a question I had about how important Nostr is, do you think?
If you asked me that question a month ago, I would have I might have underestimated it. It's just
my
mind
views
blowing.
are the same. About a month ago, I would have laughed it off.
Absolutely mind blowing what's happening there. And it's not to be missed, and it's going to be incredibly important.
It's not just like a Twitter replacement. Like
No, no,
people are
no,
starting to realize
no,
that.
no.
Okay, this is what I feel like is happening. Is it's a Twitter replacement. So I'm like,
no. Okay, so
that's
I
what
really
people thought
adapt
it was.
myself to this shit.
all right, check this out. So basically, like, it's a messaging protocol, and over here you have an app that's like a Twitter clone.
ATC, you're
It.
really
And then over here you have another app
TC.
that's like an Instagram clone. And then over here you have an app that's like set up your marketplace. Is it cracking up?
yeah, it was.
Is
You're
it
good now.
am I in the matrix?
Yeah, you're good
Yo,
now.
can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
So over here you got a Twitter clone, over here you got an Instagram clone, and they both have people communicating with each other on the same messaging network under the hood. And like you can take your profile from the Twitter clone and go log in over on the Instagram clone, and you're the same entity with the same people connected to you. And it's like this totally seamless protocol underneath that connects it all, just like Lightning. Like, you have all
Right.
these different Lightning wallets out there, and
Right.
they all are interoperable through Lightning, more or
Right.
less. But like this Nostr protocol is simple enough that you can have almost anything built on top of it that goes from being completely dependent on the messages directly to using the messages in some enhancement way or some auxiliary way. But the bottom line is it's incredibly versatile, and it's simple enough that like what the developer decides to do with it can lead to wildly huge spectrum of possible results. It's pretty slick.
And that's, kind of at the technological level is in the architecture level, it's kind of mimicking, it's a messaging, it's like mimicking human communication. Like, what are we doing all the time at work? And now even on our phones with our friends and family, like we're just sending messages of different formats back and forth with each other, whether we're texting each other memes or we're sending each other Slack messages to coordinate at our job, or we're sending like a message essentially to a website to say, hey, I want to purchase one of your products or one of your services. And they send it back.
I helped the guys with there's these guys who do this Nostr Ness website. It's like a Spaces thing, but it's like all these Nostr folks. And like they built just a little integration into like verify your identity, where you put in your public key and then it spits out a little thing that you have to go to wherever you use Nostr and publish that little note. And then it verifies that you published it on your account. And so now your ID is verified. And that's just so that you have a little verified thing in your little avatar in the Spaces type environment, right? And they imagine they can build in zapping people, and they could build in all these other integrations where it's just this little Spaces clone of an app is like, because it's having all these Nostr people, you can build these Nostr functionalities into it that end up tying it directly in with that network again that runs all these other applications.
So here's my question. How do you think AI fits into Nostr? Because I mean, like ChatGPT, these AI systems, as they evolve, they just kind of become APIs. Some of them will be public, some will be paid, some will be open source. The best ones, at least at first, will probably be the ones that cost money. But you could just integrate this AI into Nostr and these different, I don't know, there's probably a million different ways, or maybe I'm wrong, but it's all message based. Like these prompts are message based. So you're just sending a message that gets to AI and sends a message back. Like, how do you see that impacting the growth of Nostr, or do you see that as an opportunity to be exploited with not exploited in a negative way, but for value in Nostr?
It's anything. It's all of the above, man. Like you're gonna have incredible things. You're gonna have like really crazy, scary things, and everything in between.
So here's another thing that I was thinking about tonight that kind of crosses into the point I'm making here. So there was a tweet 2 days ago by Georgios Karas, GB Karas on Twitter, and it was a screenshot of ChatGPTC, and it was like the the caption was logical failure. So we asked the question: in a room there are 100 murderers, you kill one of them, how many murderers are left? And ChatGPT says, if there were originally 100 murderers in the room and you kill one of them, there would still be 99 murderers left in the room, essentially suggesting that ChatGPT had a logical failure, that if you killed somebody, there'd be 100 people in the room. But I was thinking about it, and it's like that there's not enough details in the prompt to infer
Yeah,
that
I mean, like, what if you're a murderer already, and you kill the
well,
person, and
the point is that there would still be 100. But my point
then
is that
99 is right.
that
No,
my
no, no.
no
Because
my
what if you're one of the 100?
no, but my point is, like, there's not enough information there to say that the murderer, that you killed somebody, that occurred in the room, that you were present in the room, that there were laws in that scenario that made that killing unlawful, so it was murder, right? So, like, there's just not enough details. So my point is, thinking about this a little bit deeper, because I was getting really stoned on this edible, and I'm thinking, if you had enough, information, metadata, whatever, context about the asker of the question, then you would kind of be able to infer that killing meant murder, and that, from based on other clues, maybe from the prompt, that should be implied that the murder happened, whatever stuff that they left out. The computer is trying to give an exact answer based on limited information, but that only exacerbates. I mean, it's tough between a human and a computer, but it's even tougher in some cases between people from different cultures with different languages, and communicating back and forth with them, kind of finding some technology that you could build into Nostr, right? That could infer what people really mean based on, despite what they actually ask, and kind of picking up those contextual clues about their
Yeah,
culture
but
to be able to facilitate the communication back and forth.
now you're talking about deeper levels of AI, which
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think
Are
are
there yet?
like, it's just theoretical. I just
Sure.
don't think it's like
No.
I mean, tell me when these like art AIs stop putting seven fingers on people's hands, and like, you know, like like they're not like it's not a human decision making process. It's a it's an algorithmic one, you know?
Right.
And so you're gonna reach a limit with certain aspects. I mean, human beings are able to detect detail and nuance
Right.
in a way that like maybe machines just those different like parts, but the combined sum of it is not the same. Maybe. I don't know. Ask me in a decade.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably too far away, but I don't know. That was just one of those rabbit holes I was going down, thinking about, like, oh,
Dude.
how do we pick up those context clues digitally? It's tough, because I mean, it's even tough when you're communicating with somebody with just via text, right? Like, that's why we invented all these memes and emojis. It's so we couldn't convey tone, and we couldn't express our meaning clearly enough with just text.
You see,
Yeah, but the emojis are good. What?
question. Going back to the beginning of the show, because something I never got and I wanted to get is some context about who we are speaking with tonight. This is something I didn't get.
This is TC, and he
Some
invented. Yeah, it's it.
context.
Yeah, so, like,
Yeah.
this is a good segue, I think, because
Yeah,
TC
time
built.
chain calendar.
Yeah,
That's what I wanted to get to. What is the time chain calendar and what does it mean to you?
tell us again about the time chain calendar. Like, how old is that? What made you decide to build that?
Okay, well, I launched it in November, and really for me it was a experiment to kind of just see the blockchain data and the mempool data in a different way. And I got an opportunity because I am able to build these web apps to kind of implement this different whole perspective on it. It was like a calendar to me, because one of the things that I actually thought of first was my kid's block height. I wanted to look that up, and I went through the process of finding that, and it was pretty rough on the website that I used, and so all of that came together in the sort of concept of being able to scrub through the blocks, and it all just kind of went from there. I put it out in November, and been great feedback from people, and I keep adding features, and it's essentially a different way to view the Bitcoin time chain. You
So
can
it's kind of a
yeah, go
tool
ahead.
to go back and say, hey, what was the block height at this specific date in time?
Yeah,
And
you
you can
can
see more
dial back
stats based on that.
to an old block using the little scrubber slider at the bottom, or you can just click right on the date. You can also click on the time, and you get this little interface that lets you say the year and the month and the day and the time, and then it'll look up the block that's closest to that time. And then there's actually a fun feature in there, which is if you put a date in the future, then the wizard comes up and it will predict what
Oh,
block that will be in the future. So yeah, it's a block lookup tool. Um, and on top of that, it's also a sort of a, I like to think of it like it's if the block clock and the mempool.space site had a kid, this is what it would look like, because it's got kind of you know
it's very
a
cool,
block
actually.
clock ethos, but like details that you'd see on mempool.space. And
Yeah.
at the same time, I must always tip my hat to mempool.space because I'm using their API that they,
Oh, yeah.
95% of that database is API.
So, in the process of building this, has it affected or changed the way you look at time or the way you think about what time is?
Oh man. Okay. Yeah. Uh, I mean, the orange circle on there is the blocks to the halving.
Yeah.
And so that is roughly a 4-year cycle. And the red circle on there is the blocks to the next difficulty adjustment, which we're less than 24 hours away from the next difficulty adjustment right now. And that's roughly a 2-week cycle. That's 2016 blocks. The halving is 210,000 blocks. So 4 years and 2 weeks. That's those two circles on there. That that blocks to the halving. If you look at it every day, you might not always see it move, even though the number in there is changing every block. But that blocks to the difficulty adjustment, you see it kind of tick its way around that circle every day. It's in a new position, and to me it really does function like a calendar. You feel like you're moving through time in Bitcoin's increments, and every time a block is hit, you can actually turn on a sound, so it'll make a little an audible noise when a block gets hit. And I have it open almost all the time, and I do feel it kind of helping me orient more to Bitcoin's own time.
It's
That
rhythm.
it has its own rhythm, it has its own pace, and these time cycles are long. So it's not just a clock; it's really a calendar, and at least my little presentation of it expresses that, I hope.
Mike, you're on mute, bud.
Here, yeah, I have to ask this question. What do you think that the concept of uh, this sort of block calendar here that I'm looking at, what a beautiful TimeChainCalendar.com, guys, go to this place because it's a beautiful image of this the block height clock. What do you think that'll do to our concept of day and night?
Why would those
Well,
are visual?
it's okay. So, well, it's an interesting thing, and maybe I don't know. This has been kind of like amplified on Nostr because like it's been like a Bitcoiner thing to say good morning and like
Mm.
the TimeChain calendar tells you good morning every day. If you look at it, I think it's configured from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. But there's a little thing that pops up at the top of the interface and tells you good morning every day. And it'll tell you a different little message. There's a bunch of ones in there, and it kind of randomly tells you, go prove work today or something like that. Stay humble, stack sats. It'll tell you some cool things. But on Nostr, people have been saying good morning and good night, and you say go fuck yourself, go zap yourself, pura vida, and like it's like there's a global thing happening here is my bottom line, and like it's someone's going to sleep at the same time someone else is waking up, and Bitcoiners are connected and experiencing this life cycle thing happening, and every day is pretty visceral, and every day is connected in some way to this thing that is a manifestation of all these people connecting together, and there's power in that, and there's a real energy there. And so yes, we are experiencing time communally in a very similar way, and I've seen it even just recently. There was the all sevens block. We had the block that was 777 777, and man, people really cared about that. And there was a lot of intense energy. I was counting down to it, and there was a lot of um like connectedness, like the kind you think of when you're a kid and it's like New Year's Eve and everybody's setting off the fireworks, or it's like one of those moments where you feel that thing where everyone on earth is focusing their attention on this one thing. And I think Bitcoin's doing that every 10 minutes. And it's changing people. It's changing us like collectively, like the sum of the people that are involved in Bitcoin is much greater than just the number of them
And
or just their parts individually. It's really powerful. So for me, like TimeChain Calendar has been a profound experience to like take my own perspective on Bitcoin and like manifest it in some way I can share it with other people and like let them use it and let them interact with it. And like I can't stop like, just continuing to want to nurture that because it's a powerful thing. Feels really good.
so something that I thought would be really cool, like a cool integration. I don't know if somebody wants to build it or you'd build it or whatever, but into with like an integration with TimeChain Calendar that you could like integrate with Nostr even, because you mentioned like wanting to go back and see the block height of the birth of your children, and so everybody's got kind of an emotional attachment to moments in time, and they can go back to that block, right? And like imagine like something like on Nostr that anybody could go and submit instead of like putting out an opcode, they could tag a block and kind of from the, and say,
A bot that spits out your message on a block on the calendar.
no, but like you could attach something that was publicly available, whether it was a headline, something that was profound to you, and you could say this tag a block, and then the blockchain calendar would have like a feature where you could open it up and you could just see based on anything you filter, like what random people throughout time had tagged in a block is like a significant moment to them, whether it was this is the block of this bank failing or this is the block of the birth of somebody or blah blah blah
Yeah,
blah.
so I
And
think of like carving your name in the tree or something like that,
right,
or like
right.
this that kind of thing. Yeah. So I've definitely thought about that. Let me tell you, like, because so I have some things that are in the works right now, and I have some soon to come things that are definitely like gonna happen. Uh, I am just one person working on this, and so in my spare time, so
Right.
this
So
takes
it's not
time. But
open source, yeah.
I got a big update coming that's gonna bring some pretty cool things. Like I'm gonna start translating it to different languages,
Nice.
and I'm gonna have like multilingual on there. And I'm also working on a layout that's gonna make the whole interface kind of fill the screen up more. so that on
Oh,
larger
nice.
screens it goes like
More feature rich.
much bigger. Well, not feature rich, just bigger, so
Oh,
that
sure.
you could put it up on the wall
Oh, yeah,
and you
yeah.
could see it from across the room, and it like really communicates the same thing at that scale. So I
People could
don't have
create
that
like,
super wide perspective yet. And then at the same time, I am uh, gonna put it out as a package that can run on people's nodes. So
nice. Yeah.
that's another really big milestone for it.
If
And
you had like
then
one of
after
those,
that,
if you had one of those like digital frame, like picture frames or whatever, or something connected to the internet, you could hang it on your wall and just hang that as like your clock.
yeah, I
Just
mean,
have it
I
on it.
actually shout out to Uncle Jim. He already did that with TimeChain
Nice.
Calendar the way it is currently, but that's why I want to build a mode that's going to actually fill the whole screen. So that's in the plans. So further down the road though, I want to turn this into a smartwatch. I could do an Apple Watch app. I could do an Android smartwatch app, and
That's
there's
true.
kind of just a lot of other form factors that I could try to do something with. But it's all gonna happen when it's supposed to, and at the moment I'm just excited that like I can share with the world. It's a like I said, it's a great feeling. I've been in Bitcoin for many years, but it's only these last 4 or 5 years I really feel like I'm really kind of giving something back to this whole community of people.
You know what
Hell yeah, dude.
you know what feature I really like that I'm looking at is when it's open in my tabs, it just says block and then it tells me the block number. That's really nice.
Hey, I love that too. That's important as someone who has a lot of tabs going. That one makes a difference.
So something we usually ask everybody, but I don't think we've asked you yet, is like what particular aspect or like you mentioned aping into mining from spaces a while back, and so you were really into mining for a while, and maybe you still are, but like what particular feature or aspect of Bitcoin is like really fascinating you currently?
Okay, so I have you know very small amount of firsthand experience with mining, but I've attempted to understand it, and I know I have so much more to learn. But what I do understand is just leaves me in awe. You brought it up before, the proof of work and the difficulty adjustment. These are the things that are so important to Bitcoin. That's why that time chain calendar has a red circle on it. That's the blocks the difficulty adjustment. And you can change the data that's there by clicking on the little data pieces, but like by default you see the average block time, and you see the projected difficulty adjustment for the next difficulty adjustment, and you see the hash rate. And so these data points are like front and center. They're all interconnected. It's really the block time that really
Totally.
like holds it all together. That 10-minute target is what makes this system work. And it's really, really captivated me recently. I've really come to appreciate that it's that it's that difficulty adjustment that controls the pace of Bitcoin's
Mm-hmm.
issuance. The halving controls the supply of Bitcoin's issuance. It's what ensures we have a fixed supply. But the difficulty adjustment ensures that supply is going to be fairly distributed over, multiple generations.
But you know what is
Because
it?
without that regulation of 10-minute block times that it attempts to keep us on, like all the Bitcoin would have been mined already. These crazy fucking
Right.
miners with all this hash rate. It's like it's wild.
But people talk about the difficulty adjustment in like the context that you did, where it's kind of like it is like a governor where it's kind of slowing it down so people can't mine it all at once. But I think it's underappreciated for the value it has for when if hash just dumps off of the face of the earth, like if an asteroid hit Texas or something and wiped out all the hash rate, like will those blocks stop mining? And until there's another difficulty adjustment, right, there could be like a huge time period in between. It could be much longer than 10 minutes. And there's been times in the past where it has been a lot longer. And it's the signal that that's sending about value and what people are valuing at the time. Like that is kind of underappreciated aspect of it too. It doesn't just prevent like a quantum computer from coming online and mining everything in, 2 weeks, but it also keeps people honest. Like you can't just stop putting in the work or else you stop getting reward. You can't have your
I
pudding. You
think
can't have your
also,
pudding if you don't eat your meat.
yeah,
Stupid way,
yeah.
but
I
it's
mean, also the physical constraints of this being a global system and having to operate on planet Earth, you can't have you can't have the system go too fast. The 10-minute block time is part of this, cadence and pulse of Bitcoin, but it's also a required time frame to this thing working properly. And for everything to be balanced this way and to have this time cadence to it that's so specific and seems to work, at least so far. I mean, we're in Epoch 4. It's working so well to impact human behavior. The monetary policy of Bitcoin has got the participants in this dance that's just amazing. And that is critical. And without the difficulty adjustment, we don't have that. And without the halving, we don't have that. Without proof of work, we don't have that. This whole system is absolutely anchored in those things. And that's a difficult thing for people to understand at first. I don't think they should try. I think you got to kind of pick each thing apart and think about it. But it's pretty exciting and like really just uplifting to think about how these parts fit together and how important this thing is. It's epic, y'all.
I couldn't agree more. This is the kind of stuff, this is the kind of topic that kind of really pulls me in a lot in the past few months as well. Is just this, the difficulty adjustment is kind of the when you first get into Bitcoin, it's like peeling layers of an onion. Like the more layers you pull, the more complex and beautiful it becomes. And it's like the first major shift in how you think about this technology comes, I think, from learning about the difficulty adjustment, because then it starts to get philosophical after that. It's just kind of this token that number go up, you're going to make a bunch of money. And apparently there's only 21 million, I guess. That's what I heard. I'm going to check this out. And then you get into it. And once you get to the difficulty adjustment, that's when it stops becoming about getting rich and like, oh shit, this is changing. This changes how I think about everything.
Yeah, man, we didn't even talk about Bitcoin transactions and UTXOs and any of that fun stuff.
We'll have to have you
Because
back on to talk about that sometime.
That is definitely like a wonderful thing to start unwrapping.
DC, thank you for coming on tonight, joining us. Do you want to lay any sort of breadcrumbs to yourself?
Yeah, you guys, thank you. This has been a lot of fun. I'd love to come back. You can find me on Twitter. My TimeChain Calendar account is giving updates about the app and also just kind of trying to keep tabs with where things are at. And that's at TimeChain Cal, CAL, on Twitter. And then I'm spending more time on Nostr these days on the personal side. So I'm at TC on Nostr. But yeah, I'm on this ride and eyes wide open. The laser eyes for me is nothing to do with any price. It's about clarity and like cutting through the fog, and that's what it's about. So I'm stoked to continue to meet more plebs and more like real people And that's powerful too, because this network is going to keep growing. That's all I got to say.
Oh, man. Thank you for joining us. I'll cut it. Thanks again for listening to the High Hash Rate podcast. You can find us on Twitter at High Hash Rate, or you can hit up Dan at Heartland Bitcoin, HRTLND Bitcoin, or myself, Mike, at Rundance Bitcoin. That's all one word, Rundance Bitcoin. If you're a fellow pleb or you just want to shoot the shit with two high Bitcoiners, reach out to us.
Holy Toledo!